This video is a little bit different to what you'd usually find right here on Probably Hades. If you've read the title and you've been with me long enough, you might think, hang on, beating Minecraft for 3DS is not a phone review. So I think we need something a little bit different for how this video is shot, and I'm not talking about the slightly different angle that I'm using today. I think we need a complete change.
Much better. Last month, when I made my video on how to install the Modernisation Megapack for the 3DS version of Minecraft, I got a few comments telling me to actually play the game, so I gave it a go. I mean, seriously, how hard could it be? It's just Minecraft, and I had no other ideas for what video to make this week. As I quickly found out, I seriously underestimated how difficult this would be, from the outright useless camera control stick to the fact that the 3DS just does not have enough processing power for this game. I ran into, various challenges across the way, so without further ado, this is how I tried to beat Minecraft for the 3DS and failed. Unless creative mode counts. When you initially start the game, it seems like a perfectly cromulent version of Minecraft. Before you actually have to do anything, the game looks and runs pretty nice. The controls haven't been in your hands long enough for you to get carpal tunnel, and it's a fun gimmick seeing it on the 3DS. Now, it would have been even more of a fun gimmick if it was actually in 3D, like Mojang promised it would be, but I digress. You might have noticed at this point that I'm just kind of filming my 3DS screen here, and I'm truly sorry. It is almost impossible to reliably capture 3DS gameplay from a real system without spending hundreds on a capture card system and waiting the weeks to months it can take to get them to you. There are very few people who still make 3DS capture card systems considering how difficult it is, and of course none of the people who do are based in Sydney. Because why would they be? There are methods through custom firmware like Horizon and NTRCFW, both of which I tried to use and both of which subsequently failed, as they either crashed immediately or crashed after a few seconds. And considering how poorly this game runs on its own without screen streaming software running in the background, it's probably for the best. I could have emulated the game, but then I may as well just said I beat Minecraft on my computer, but I turned down the graphics and capped my frames and I used a controller. When I'd first started playing, I was feeling good, I was full of energy, I'd had my camera and my capture software all set up properly, and my hands hadn't started hurting yet. Hell, I was narrating my gameplay in real time with a face cam. Unheard of, I know, brand new format, no one has ever tried this before.
Depending on how well this does, I may convert to a Minecraft channel.
Starting up Minecraft for your 3DS, the first thing you'll immediately notice is that the graphics are not exactly amazing, which is hindered by both the low processing power of the system and also the 240p screen that you have the displeasure of staring at. Look, I love the 3DS as much as the next guy, but this is not exactly a perfect experience, especially for cross-platform games that aren't able to have the same optimization for the system as exclusives and first-party titles, which get much more attention to detail. The other big problem that you'll notice with the game starts as soon as you try to look around or really do anything, and it's right about then that you'll realize that the C-stick on the 3DS is seriously not that great. It's more than fine for games that occasionally use it, like how you can use it for smash attacks instead of the circle pad and a button, and apparently it's great for Majora's Mask, but I personally found it very difficult to control Minecraft. But even with all of that in mind, I had no issues getting through the first initial tasks of your average Minecraft playthrough. I collected wood, made some tools, got some stone, made some more tools, you get the idea. Crafting and inventory management is really where the 3DS starts to shine, and it's where the few optimizations that Other Ocean, the company behind the port, did make for this come into play. At this point in time in the legacy console era of Minecraft, the other two console ports that did have touchscreens didn't really utilize them perfectly. I do think the Switch is technically included because it did get legacy console, but it got Bedrock like a few months later, so I'm not counting it. While I believe that the PS Vita port did have very basic touch controls, it wasn't really optimized, it was just a legacy UI. And the Wii U was even worse, where they could have had the gamepad act as a dedicated map and use it for inventory management with the touchscreen. They went with the bare minimum of support, where you could either play the full game on the TV or the gamepad, not both, no specific controls, nothing. They did learn here on the 3DS, which is technically Pocket Edition and not actually legacy console, by using the bottom screen for a dedicated map, coordinates, and hotbar display, along with utilizing it for easier crafting and inventory management. While I would have liked the option to just manually put in crafting recipes here, it was still pretty quick to get through my options, especially considering the limited item range in this older version of the game. After my camera decided to just die, which is a pretty recurring theme in this video, I found a lot of iron in just a few minutes of mining. For iron specifically, I found it to be much more abundant in this version than my more recent playthroughs in Modern Java Edition. But I could have also just been in a different biome or something. And when I say abundant, I truly mean it. After I'd gotten my full iron armor and tools, and while I was in the end, I was using stacks of iron ore, remember when it gave you that, to build up to the crystals, but I'm getting ahead of myself here. Another recurring theme in this video is the incredibly distracting handling of autosaving that this game has. Unlike Bedrock, Java, and even most legacy versions at the time, Minecraft for 3DS completely pauses your game every 20 minutes to save your game to the microSD card. It's only kinda good because it lets me keep track of how long I've been playing, but honestly I don't even know if I want to know. About 20 minutes into my playthrough, I'd gotten my first piece of iron armor, this chest plate, and my first autosave of what would be many. Autosave, freeze my entire game. Let's go! From this point onwards, it was all about surviving through the nights and finding enough iron to get full armor. I did also have the side mission of finding enough sheep to make a bed and sleep through those said nights, but my main priorities were food above ground and minerals under it. I'm basically just big agriculture and big mining all in one. Be sure to subscribe if your country is rich in minerals, and I'll be there shortly to steal all of it. Every single bit, all of it. I stayed above ground for the night and returned to the mines later, continuing to harvest for more iron and actually cook the raw meat I'd acquired in my time above ground. I very quickly found enough iron to almost get a full set of armor, minus the boots. From there, my next objective was to find diamonds to get the pickaxe I'd need for some obsidian to make my nether portal. You might also be thinking that I need gold for the nether so piglins don't attack me, but this version predates the nether update, so it wasn't a worry. I decided to run around autosave side again to pass the time through the night while also continuing to attempt to search for caves that would hopefully have diamonds. And it was around this point that the game became genuinely infuriating. Minecraft 3DS received its last breath of support before the Caves and Cliffs update, and the Modernisation Megapack devs can only do so much to bring this game up to modern versions. And clearly, making caves that actually have useful resources in them is not possible at the moment. It felt like every cave I thought I found was just a tunnel through a hill or something, or they would end really early with nothing but more coal and more iron, neither of which I particularly needed. I persevered, attempting to suppress the luxuries I'd come to know and love from modern survival Minecraft, and eventually slaughtered enough sheep to make a bed and sleep through the nights. I woke up from my first sleep, broke my bed, and then immediately dropped my axe, because the reverse layout of Nintendo's controllers are much harder to adapt to than I initially anticipated. Jump and drop are still A and B, but now they're in opposite positions, so that's always fun. I dropped a lot of items on accident before I eventually got used to it a few hours in. Dropping my axe was the most interesting thing I'd encountered right now, as I spent another 20 minutes or so in the caves before my camera died. I also died and lost everything. I blame it on the 3DS. Oh! What the hell is this? Oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no. I decided to just start over here, considering how much iron was vastly accessible in basically any hole in the ground, and how most of my stuff would have burnt to a crisp in the lava I was knocked into anyway. After running around in the caves again, I died. No, bro! I swear that Minecraft isn't usually this impossibly difficult, and why in the hell are there so many baby zombies? And husks. I started over once again, considering I had basically nothing from the last time I started over about 8 minutes ago, and I finally got my first bit of iron armor again after half an hour since restarting the game. Eventually, after pulling up some Instagram reels, I'd gained my full set of iron armor again and continued on my journey of getting diamonds, but not before also crafting a bucket and flint and steel, both of which I would need later in the game, and I started making my way out of the cave that I'd finished exploring. I hadn't made a second bed at this point, so I spent my next night attempting to find caves that would help in my conquest for diamond, coming across various lava pools with obsidian I couldn't even think about mining, and stumbling through stacks of iron ore with none of that diamond ore in sight. I'd started treading much more carefully around lava at this point because I was clearly capable of losing hours of progress to it multiple times, which I will continue to blame on the 3DS. Something I haven't mentioned as of yet is that you are forced to push the circle pad forward twice to sprint instead of the usual way of pressing down on the left stick, because you can't push down on the circle pad. Since getting my second full set of iron armor, I had spent around an hour in the mines and eventually just decided to call it off and finish my mining off camera. I'm going to do some off camera mining, and I'm going to come back with diamonds. See you when that happens. It is, as you might be able to guess, much more difficult to play a 3DS game when you've got a tripod in front of you, and considering I'd been doing the same damn thing for an hour, I figured it wasn't worth filming all of it. I'd started watching Scott Stash while I was going through all of this. I just figured he wouldn't be happy with me playing one of his videos in his entirety while I mined, so I can't keep you guys entertained, unfortunately. After I've rested up and regained maybe a fraction of my enthusiasm towards this game, I decided to pull out the trusty strip mining mining method and dug into a mountain straight to Y level 12, which is still the optimal level for diamonds in this game. And as if it were fate or some cruel punishment, I found a vein of diamonds in just a few minutes. I really wish I'd just done that from the start. And you should have subscribed from the start of this video, and you definitely should now if you haven't already. You don't want to miss my coverage of the Switch 2 experience in Melbourne next week, and my unboxing of the Switch 2 on the day it launches. You know, maybe turn on the notifications as well. By now I'd lost most of my energy, and I didn't end up continuing with my live narration or face cam, which was so incredible. The next part of my journey to beating this game was finding obsidian, which you'd think would be pretty easy, right? I'd somehow lost or forgotten about every pool of lava that I'd found on my way to find diamond, and I'd managed to turn every lava pool that I did find after that into cobblestone instead of obsidian. It took me over an hour of just running around aimlessly to find a pool of lava that I managed to successfully turn into obsidian instead of cobblestone again, and it was then where I could finally build up my first portal and get into the Nether. You'd correctly assume that we need the Nether to get blaze rods, but you might also assume that we need it for endermen, and if you did, well, you are just wrong. Again, this version predates the Nether update with all of those biomes, so we're stuck just roaming around in the overworld to try to find endermen to kill for Eyes of Ender. My portal had spawned in a bit of an interesting location in the Nether, but I'd found the fortress after a short while, and immediately noticed that whether skeletons were completely broken and just did nothing, which I welcomed with open arms. One bug, or possible user error that wasn't as welcome, was the fact that the fireballs I was deflecting at the ghast shooting at me just did nothing until I finally hit one right at its legs. I don't remember this ever being a thing, and I can't find anything about it ever being a thing in other versions, so I'm gonna call it a bug. I died multiple times in the Nether, and it was at this point that I actually clicked how the game only saves every 20 minutes. And also gives you the option to quit without saving. You can see where this is going, and honestly, this is the point where I was starting to give up on the idea of doing this legitimately. You may not consider that cheating, but I become much more indefensible later on in this video. I never actually found a spawner for blazes in my time in the fortress, they just kinda kept showing up, and I kept killing them until I eventually found the 6 rods that I would need. I was smart enough to remember to take a photo of the coordinates of my portal, and I made my way back into the overworld. I did not go back into the Nether once in this playthrough. Eventually, after spending just north of 20 minutes in the overworld and almost 6 hours total in game, I realized I would not finish this video in time for upload day if I just sat around and waited for the occasional enderman to show up and hopefully drop a pearl if they didn't kill me first. By the time I got 12 of those, if I were to just assume that none of them broke, I'd be well behind schedule and probably have some major hand conditions. I put the game in creative mode, and look, if you're disappointed at this, just click away now because this is far from the only time. I went back into survival mode and found the stronghold using the eyes that I had acquired just a minute ago, and walked around for a solid 15 minutes before remembering that, on occasion, you can find a stronghold without a portal in Bedrock. I couldn't find anything about this happening in 3DS edition, because you can't find shit about 3DS edition, but I wasn't taking my chances. At this point in the video, it had just struck 11 PM, I was tired of using a 3DS, my friend was on a call with me, and I just wanted to finish this recording so I could go suffer even more by hopping into Valorant. I went back into creative and built the fucking thing myself after I found the portal in a really weird spot that probably wasn't built there by someone. I slept to set my spawn point, and I jumped in. It took me about 34 minutes to beat the dragon and finally finish my playthrough. What I didn't realize is that even when I was in creative mode, I was woefully unprepared for this fight. I'd accidentally replaced my pickaxe with end portal frames, so I couldn't even break through the cages with the crystals, and I didn't even have snowballs to break them from a distance. I also didn't have ender pearls, only eyes, and I didn't have a water bucket, so if I got knocked off by the dragon, I was cooked, and half of my armor was broken, and I just didn't realize. There was a lot of dying and reloading into the game before it had saved that I died, and half of it was just because the enderman was so aggressive for no reason at all. I have no idea why. There were points where I had only been looking straight up, and they would walk in front of me, and then get mad that they'd walked in front of me into my line of sight. I feel like they aren't this bad in modern Java, or at least if they were, I could quickly react to them, considering I could barely move my camera on the 3DS to actually fight them. There were points where this stick just didn't respond to my movement. My system has battle scars from my fingernail digging into the C-stick when it refused to do anything. You might be wondering why I was so exact with that 34 minutes instead of just saying half an hour. So I spent almost exactly 30 minutes just dying, sometimes to the dragon sending me flying and me being completely incapable of clutching with a pearl or a water bucket, sometimes to endermen swarming me and dropping my game to slideshow level frame rates that had me completely unable to retaliate, sometimes to getting caught in the dragon breath and being unable to turn my camera and walk away. I spent the last 4 minutes in creative mode. I killed the dragon by flying around it and making it impossible for me to die. I was done with this game and I will never open it again on this system. I might be the first person to ever say this, but I could finally play Valorant. This was an experience, despite the astonishing work that the Modernisation Megapack contributors have incorporated into this abandoned version of the game, and the future possibilities that they are actively working towards, like reverse engineering the game to add instead of modify content. This game is still not very fun to play through entirely, at least for me personally. Maybe I'm just exposing myself and I'm actually just really bad at games, but I recently beat Java Edition on a modern version with good performance and usable controls, and it was so much easier despite having harder difficulty. This version might be fun for a gimmick survival world where you don't actually plan on beating the game, but other than that, I cannot really recommend playing this version. At the end of it all, my final playthrough was 2 minutes short of 7 hours, and I truly believe it would have been at least 12 if I hadn't cheated my way to the end. If you want to play Minecraft on a portable handheld, please buy a Switch, or a Retroid Pocket, or get a backbone for your phone, or do literally anything else. If it must be a console legacy version, please just use a Vita. I know Bedrock gets flack for being bad, but it's so much better than 3DS. And if you really hate Bedrock that much, just run Java on a Steam Deck. Thanks for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed a little bit of a deviation from the regularly scheduled Hades you're used to. Don't worry, the tech content obviously isn't going anywhere, and I probably won't do the Minecraft gimmick again, but gaming is a pretty big part of my life, and I want to incorporate that into the channel some more. Might even get a 3DS capture card. If you're looking for more content, you can follow me over on Instagram, Blue Sky, and everything else with the links on screen and in the description below. And make sure you get subscribed here too as well. It keeps me motivated, it makes me money, it's free, and you can always undo it if you change your mind. If you're looking for more videos, you can click over here to check out the tutorial that started this whole endeavor, or you can click over here to check out whatever YouTube thinks you'll like. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you all next week in Melbourne.